I still remember the sound of the rain that morning. It was soft, like 1,000 whispers against the window pane, the kind of rain that feels almost respectful, as though the sky itself knows it's intruding on grief. My husband, David, lay on the hospital bed, his breathing shallow, his hand trembling in mine. The machines hummed quietly beside him, those steady, sterile beeps that somehow make you feel both comforted and haunted at once. He turned to me, eyes glassy, fading, and said the last words I ever heard from him. "Mary, whatever happens, don't open the box." His fingers tightened weakly around mine, then went still. Just like that, the world stopped. I thought he was delirious from the medication, mumbling nonsense. I wanted to ask what box, but the nurse was already pulling me away, and all I could hear was the rain and the machines and those words. I didn't think about them again. Not for a while, anyway. But a year later, standing alone in our empty cottage, I found the box, and I wished to God I'd left it buried.
After David's death, I moved away for a while. The cottage on Windmere Lane felt too full of ghosts, of him, of us, of everything we'd never said. But when my sister convinced me to come back, she said it might help me heal. So I did. The moment I stepped into that creaky old place again, I felt his presence. The smell of his books, the faint trace of his cologne in the hallway. Every floorboard seemed to sigh with memory. I spent the first few days cleaning, sorting through old things. There were piles of books, photo albums, and drawers filled with letters. David had always been a sentimental man. It wasn't until the third day that I found it. In the attic. A small wooden chest, tucked beneath an old blanket. It wasn't locked, but the lid was heavy, almost reluctant to open. And carved into the top, faintly in David's handwriting, "For Mary, when the time is right." I froze. Those words and his last ones collided in my mind. Don't open the box. For Mary, when the time is right. My heart began to race. I left it there, closed, dusty, silent. But from that moment on, I couldn't stop thinking about it. A few nights later, I woke up around 3 a.m. The rain was back, tapping gently against the windows, and the house, that old, creaking house, seemed alive. I heard something from upstairs, a soft, dragging sound, like fabric brushing across the floorboards. I sat up, listening. Then silence. It's an old house, I told myself. Wood expands, pipes shift, the wind moans through cracks. But as I lay back down, I could have sworn I heard a whisper. My name. Mary. My blood ran cold. I got up, took the flashlight from my bedside drawer, and climbed the stairs step by step. The attic door was slightly ajar. I hadn't left it that way. When I pushed it open, the beam of my flashlight swept across the room, dust floating like silver threads. Everything was still, except the box. It wasn't where I left it. It had been moved closer to the center of the room. And on top of it, a single white rose. I didn't sleep after that. I sat in the kitchen till sunrise, staring at my cup of tea, trying to rationalize what I'd seen. Maybe I'd moved it earlier and forgotten. Maybe the rose had fallen from an old wreath. But deep down, I knew. Something wasn't right. That afternoon, I called my neighbor, Mrs. Clark, for tea. She was in her 70s, kind, the type who believes ghosts are just memories that refuse to behave. When I told her about the box, she went quiet. "Memory, did David ever speak about his family before you met?" "Not much," I admitted. "He said his parents died when he was young. Why?" She hesitated. "There was talk years ago about a tragedy. A sister, I think. No one really knew." That night, unable to resist any longer, I went back to the attic. I knelt beside the box, my hands trembling. And for the first time, I noticed something new. A small envelope wedged beneath it. It had my name on it. "For Mary, if you find this before the right time, forgive me." Inside was a single piece of paper. David's handwriting, shaky, rushed. If you love me, don't open the box. There are truths that can't be undone.
For the next few days, I tried to pretend everything was normal. I kept myself busy, cleaning, gardening, baking things I didn't want to eat. But the house seemed to breathe differently now, like it was waiting for me to do something. One afternoon, while sorting through David's old desk drawers, I found a photo. It was tucked inside a worn leather wallet, behind his driver's license. In it, a young girl, maybe 8 or 9 years old, sat on the steps of a country house, holding a stuffed rabbit. Her dark hair was braided neatly, her smile shy. On the back, in David's handwriting, Eleanor, age 9. Eleanor. The name stirred something faintly familiar, though I couldn't place it. I'd known David for 12 years. We'd built a life, shared secrets, endured losses, but never once had he mentioned a sister. That night, I dreamt of the girl. She was sitting at the end of my bed, the stuffed rabbit in her lap. The house behind her burned, smoke curling into the black sky. When I woke, the air in the room was icy, and on my nightstand, where I always left my wedding ring, lay something else instead. A small brass key. I stared at that key for a long time. It wasn't from our house. I'd never seen it before. It was old, ornate, the kind you might find on a century-old lock. I knew instantly where it belonged, the box. I told myself I wouldn't open it, not after the letter, not after his warning. But the human heart is a stubborn thing. The more we're told not to look, the more desperate we become to see. That evening, as the sun sunk over Windmere Lane, I climbed the attic stairs again, dust and light tangled in the air, the way they always do in forgotten spaces. The box sat in the same spot, patient, expectant. I knelt down, held the key, and whispered, "I'm sorry, David." Then I turned it in the lock. The click was soft, but it echoed through me like thunder. Inside, wrapped in linen, were several objects: a small wooden toy horse missing a wheel, a silver locket tarnished with age, a folded newspaper clipping, and a second envelope. My hands shook as I opened the envelope. Mary, if you're reading this, it means you couldn't leave it alone. I understand. I couldn't either. But what you'll find inside isn't a confession. It's a curse I've carried since childhood. Eleanor isn't gone. She's waiting. My heart pounded. I unfolded the newspaper clipping. Local girl 9 dies in tragic house fire. Parents missing. The date, March 12, 1989. The location, Surrey. The girl's photo, the same one from David's wallet. The same braves, the same shy smile. It rained again that night. The kind of rain that drowns out your thoughts, heavy and relentless. I was sitting in the living room, the fire burning low, when I heard it, 3 soft knocks at the door. I hesitated. Who could it be at nearly midnight? When I opened the door, no one was there. Just the dark lane, the shimmer of wet cobblestones, and the smell of rain and earth. I stepped outside, heart racing, and saw footprints. Small, barefoot prints leading away from the doorstep toward the garden path. I followed them with my flashlight. The beam cut through the mist, catching glimmers of silver on wet leaves. The prints stopped near the old apple tree, and there, lying in the mud, was a stuffed rabbit from the photograph. I picked it up. It was damp, cold, and smelled faintly of smoke. That was the night I stopped pretending the house was just a house, because when I turned back toward the cottage, someone was standing in the upstairs window. A little girl, watching me. I barely slept. When dawn came, I packed a small bag and drove to town. I needed answers, and I knew where to start. The public library on Bridge Street still kept old archives. The woman at the front desk, a gray-haired lady named Mabel, looked up the old newspaper microfilms for me. She found 3 articles. The first was the same as the clipping in the box. The second reported that the bodies of Eleanor's parents were never recovered. And the third was from 2 years later. Local boy adopted after tragedy. The boy's name? David Whitmore. My chest went tight. He had never told me he was the boy who survived,
that Eleanor had been his sister, that the fire that took her had also taken their parents. But there was one line in the article that made my blood run cold. Investigators could not explain the origin of the fire. Neighbors reported hearing a child's laughter moments before the blaze began. I left the library trembling. When I got back to the cottage, the door was open. And from upstairs, faintly, a voice, a child's voice, singing. The melody was faint at first, like a nursery rhyme half remembered. It floated down the staircase, soft and cold as the morning mist. Hush, Mal, hush, the fire's asleep. My skin prickled. Every instinct told me to run, but grief makes fools of us. It makes us believe we can reason with ghosts. I climbed the stairs, calling out, "Eleanor?" The singing stopped. The attic door stood slightly open. Light, too white, too steady to be sunlight, spilled through the crack. When I pushed it wider, the air inside was heavy with heat, like the moment before a storm. The box lay open again, though I'd locked it and hidden the key. Beside it, on the floorboards, sat the little girl from the photo. Same dress, same braids, eyes dark and bottomless. She smiled. "You shouldn't have opened it," she whispered. I couldn't breathe. "You're not real," I managed. She tilted her head. Neither was he. And in that instant, the attic shifted. The walls flickered. Faded wallpaper became scorched plaster, smoke rising in the corners. The scent of burning wood filled the air. I was standing in someone else's memory. A small boy screamed from somewhere below. "Eleanor, get out!" Then a door slammed, and fire swallowed the sound. When I turned, the girl was crying now, clutching the stuffed rabbit to her chest. "He left me," she said. "He promised he'd come back, but he didn't." The flames around her stilled, frozen like glass. I realized she wasn't the danger, she was the wound. David hadn't kept his promise. He'd escaped, leaving her trapped between the living and the dead. The box hadn't been a curse, it had been a cage. And I had opened it. The attic light dimmed, the scene snapping back to the present. Eleanor reached out, her hand small and trembling. "Help me go home." I didn't remember running, but suddenly I was in the garden, the box clutched to my chest. Wind tore through the trees, scattering ash that shouldn't have been there. I carried it to the old stone well at the edge of the property. Our wishing well, David used to call it. The air tasted of smoke again. I opened the box one last time. Inside, the locket had come undone. A tiny photo inside showed the two children together, David and Eleanor. "I'm sorry," I whispered, "for both of you." I dropped the box into the darkness. The earth shuddered. A gust of hot air rushed up, burning my face. Then silence. The next morning, the cottage was still standing, but everything smelled faintly of soot. On the kitchen table lay the stuffed rabbit, clean and dry, its button eyes glinting in the sun. I left Winsman Lane that day, sold the house to a stranger, and never looked back. But sometimes when I drive through the countryside at dusk, I hear a child humming that same lullaby, carried on the wind. "Hush now, hush, the fire's asleep." And I think of David's last words. He hadn't been warning me not to open the box. He'd been warning me not to free what was inside.